Hi, my name is Madison Unger, and this is my Math 160 final project. My topic question is how can I create a piece of artwork that uses tiling, symmetry, and wallpaper while still being aesthetically appealing. I originally chose to only focus on symmetry for my final project because it was very similar to my overall midterm topic, which was patterns. The original question was basically the same, except instead of tilings symmetry, it was just symmetry. Then I decided to add on tilings and wallpaper groups to the question. So for a brief review, we learned about tilings in class, so I wanted to go over a little bit of what we talked about. So regular tilings covers the plane. There's no gaps or overlap, and it's using one regular polygon. And Archimedean semi-regular tilings are two or more regular polygons where same polygons in same order at each vertex. For my research process, when I very first started the project, I wanted to create something that would still look aesthetically pleasing if I took a picture of it and edited it in almost like a kaleidoscope-like way, hence a form of symmetry. But then I realized I wouldn't be doing most of the design and I needed to take a different approach. I realized that I could have drawn a line on a paper and then edit it to look cool, so I wanted to go about it in a different way. So while doing some more research, I came across tilings and remembered what we learned about them in class and decided to add that to my research. Also, Professor Downard suggested that I look into wallpaper groups, so I decided to add that to my question. While trying to find a way to use tilings and wallpaper groups to achieve the look that I wanted, I came across this repetition pattern kind of thing, which is repeat that design by rotating it counterclockwise by 90 degrees whenever translated either left or up, and clockwise 90 degrees when translated down or to the right. So basically it was saying if you have this one single pattern, one single polygon is one way to phrase it. If you were to do those steps, you would be able to achieve a sort of tiling and wallpaper kind of design. And then I also came across wallpaper patterns occur frequently in architecture and decorative art. So that's when I decided that I want to be sure that whatever I was going to create, I wanted to it would be something that I wouldn't mind having plastered all over my room if I were to use it as wallpaper. I wanted to be able to use it as decorative art. And then for the art process, I decided that I wanted to switch the order of the repetition that I found. So the order that was that I found in the book, I decided I want to switch that up in order for it to be more original. When it came time to decide what kind of shape I wanted to use, I turned to these quotes. So although the most symmetric of repeating patterns are those built with square symmetry on square tiles and hexagonal symmetry on hexagonal tiles, it is interesting to consider other less symmetric types of repeating patterns. And also, symmetry is pervasive in both natural and man-made environments. So due to both of those quotes, I decided that I wanted to be sure that my shape wasn't a regular polygon and something that happened in nature, kind of a way to take a different approach to your regular hexagonal or square wallpaper and symmetry tiling type of things. So I decided to make my tilings out of clouds because I want to explore how a tiling might turn out without the shape being a regular polygon. So once I decided on clouds, I sketched out some different clouds in order to decide which one I like the best, and also use that for my tiling. And even though I decided not to use a regular polygon for my tiling, I did sketch out some rectangles around where I wanted them to go, and just was sure that each space had enough room for each cloud. From there, I sketched out every single cloud with a pencil just so I could be sure once again that the spacing was correct. And one piece of information that I found particularly interesting was, in practice, of course, patterns must be drawn using at least 2 colors. And many ornamental patterns are drawn using complicated set of lines and curves. So I like this because of how similar it was to my midterm project once again. Very similar with the patterns idea that I was going with it back then. I liked connecting my 2 ideas throughout the quarter. And I was inspired by that quote to make sure that there were at least 2 colors in whatever I made. And so I decided to make the clouds themselves pink and purple while keeping the background kind of like a blue color. For painting my artwork, I decided to use watercolor and color a bit more sporadically. I figured that if I made sure the actual outline of the cloud was the same, I could have a bit of creative freedom while coloring while still portraying tiling. So by keeping the actual hard lines of the tiling the same, I could have more free will with it in the coloring. One thing that I did have trouble with while making my painting was actually having each cloud look exactly the same. So because I was drawing every single one by hand, but most of the time when I draw a cloud, so this was because I was drawing every single one by hand, and most of the time when I draw clouds, not one looks exactly like the other. So it was hard to be sure that they were spaced out the same. And there is slight variation. You can probably tell. And it's because I didn't use a stencil. I wanted to have a more organic kind of feel to it. So if you go over to my document with the images on it, the top image is pictures of arrows. So this was how like the example from the book kind of showed me with the quote about the repetition. That's kind of how they meant it. And so I kind of drew it out and I wanted to analyze it more to identify more patterns in it. And I did that by color blocking where the similarities laid. And so then I on the bottom arrows on that the arrows on the bottom of the page, those were the arrows that I redrew. That's how I redid the repetition to make it more original while also still staying within a repetition, like the repetition kind of pattern that was given. Then the next image are the clouds I drew out to see which one I liked the best and which one I thought would work best for my creative portion. And I went with the one that I put a little star next to because I liked how it was definitely wider so you could tell when it was rotated, but also it kind of looked like the top part of the cloud went up higher almost, like the widest, like almost like a triangle kind of like shape, but not really a triangle. So in that way you could tell when it was rotated, instead of if you were to just do kind of like a long cloud, it would just kind of look like a rectangle, so you wouldn't be able to tell every single way it was rotated. Then the third picture is a midpoint drawing of my creative portion. That was partway through. I decided to stop and take a picture to show the process. And then the last picture is my final creative portion. I really liked how it turned out. So in conclusion, a lot goes more into creating wallpaper than I originally anticipated. Before, I honestly thought that the only type of wallpaper was an image repeat over and over again without much thought. Like, I just thought you made one single design and then you just repeated it all over like the plane. So it was really interesting to see the different ways that how much I was wrong, and how while researching, finding different ways that wallpaper can be displayed. As I continue to do art beyond this class, I will definitely be taking some of these techniques with me, because I found it really interesting to see how the images can be portrayed in different ways, and how perspective of an image. Like at one point I tried drawing some of the clouds sideways, and when I was sketching them out, and that wasn't going so well, so I had to like turn the page and like trying to be sure that every cloud was the same. It was just definitely a very interesting process. And then my bibliography is at the bottom of the poster. Thank you so much.